far north as Illinois, Kentucky, into Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Here we had 122,000 customers who were impacted by outages. Those outages were attributed mostly to vegetation, trees, limbs that fell on the primary distribution lines and on some of the lateral lines, and also on individual home service lines. We also had high winds that caused outages due to impact on our poles and our distribution lines. So the damage is widespread. Mike, if you could flip the slide very quickly. This map will show you in a little more detail. All of the red on that map are areas where we know that there is damage to our system. You will see some areas in blue that are highlighted. Those areas are areas that we have been able to restore. Since the beginning of the storms last night, we have been able to restore power to more than 32,000 customers, and we have about another 90,000 customers to go. The primary focus for us is to make sure that we avoid other kinds of emergencies. So we are focused on our water distribution system, sanitary sewer systems, and our hospitals. Those are the first priorities for us to make sure that we restore. We are watching those very closely. I just learned before coming that there is a small area of our water service in the northern part of Shelby County that may come under a boil water advisory later today because of low pressures. Again, nothing wrong with the water, it just when it drops below 20 psi, we have a mandatory requirement to ask them to boil water. So when we get that area, if that comes to pass, we will make sure we push that out. And that's simply attributed to the lack of ability to push water when there's an electrical outage at a pumping station. We have all of our pumping stations on. Some of our wells were impacted, and so our ability to draw more water out of the ground to push out in several pumping stations was impacted. So more to follow on that. We are coordinating with the city and county EMA agencies and Office of Emergency Management. We understand that the heat that is coming later in the week is going to be impactful, and so when those communities decide to put cooling centers in place, we will help support that and make sure that we identify areas where you can reliably have power for those cooling centers. Today, I know they will be asking people to occupy buildings that are already open to the public, such as libraries, community centers, stores that you might normally frequent as a respite from the heat today, but there are no cooling centers open at this time. We have a lot of help. We have a full complement of Memphis Light Gas and Water troubleshooters and line crews that are out making repairs today. Largely it's assessing damage because it was pretty widespread and difficult to assess overnight. So Mike, if you'd like to page through just a few of the pieces of damage, we have some images here that will just show you. You can see some very large trees down if you'll keep advancing, Mike. Where it has impacted our power lines, you'll see trees that have brought power lines down all along major corridors and into neighborhoods. So while many folks have expressed to us, I didn't think it was that bad. This is the 6th worst storm in Memphis Light Gas and Water's history as far as the number of customers who were impacted. So it is going to be a very large effort to get individuals restored. We have brought 52 contract crews in to help our line restoration crews, and they are being complemented by all of our MLGW teams, including 38 teams that are out doing damage assessment, 35 troubleshooters who are out spotting damage and helping to correct small problems, and we have 47 tree trimming crews that are out clearing vegetation off those lines so that our teams can begin that restoration process. I'll wrap up by saying that we're asking everybody to have a plan to be without power for a number of days, and we're asking friends to help friends, family to help family. We will do our best to get power on as quickly as we can, but I cannot today give you an estimate for full restoration, which I know is a question on everybody's mind. It is key on our mind as well. I just would not be able to give you anything like an accurate number until I get a good sense of all of the damage that's out there and exactly what those repairs will be. And it is extensive. These pictures are just kind of a snippet of what's out there. Certainly the news crews, I know you'll be driving around the northern part of the county, Bartlett, Cordova, Raleigh, Fraser, you will see significant damage. I ask everybody to be careful in the area where you see damage and lines down and steer clear. But our friends and neighbors are suffering because of this significant damage to their individual property and that they are without power. So you have our commitment that we are going to do everything that we can to get power on as quickly as we can. We're going to monitor those water systems to make sure that everybody has the water that they need. And we ask everybody to be careful out in the heat. One other note, I know there's a temptation for property owners to try to clear vegetation. That's fine, but if it's in and around what you think might be power lines, I would ask you to use caution and wait for a professional to help you clear that, because I don't want another incident to occur because somebody inadvertently came in contact with a power line. So with that, I will stop and take any questions that you have.
Yeah, Doug, last time we were here, it was you talking about damage to substations and how that was an issue. Where are you at on that improvement? Because again, last time we talked about this, you mentioned substations, and then the 5-year improvement plan, if I'm not mistaken, this is year 4. Why are we still here talking about widespread outages?
So it's a couple of really good questions. Our substations, we have been making improvements to our substations. That's modernization of circuit breakers. The infrastructure investment that we're making is largely 3 parts. Number 1, vegetation management, which is clearing trees back from the power lines, and we have said in the past that we are behind. We have just recently issued at our board meeting relatively robust $200 million worth of contracts over the next 5 years to catch us up on that vegetation management. I will say in a storm like this, vegetation management will clear trees back 10 or 15 feet, but when you have 100-foot tall trees that are falling, the vegetation management was not probably going to prevent some of this. Your question is a good one. Our vegetation management and our infrastructure improvements, there is an urgency for us to get that done. As you know, the impact of COVID on workforce and availability of parts impacted for about 2 years, but we have taken another look at that, and every year we will update our 5-year plan so that I'm always looking 5 years in the future, and we will assess exactly what we're going to do this year. So we are on it. We have a significant amount of money, and we are executing that plan today. We are ahead in many areas like pole replacement, which is a key part of infrastructure. When you saw many of those poles snapped, pole replacement will help us with some of that, cross-arm replacement, so we're well ahead there. There are areas where we're a little behind, but those are the areas we're trying to catch up.
If I could just get a quick follow-up. So
sure.
You said 2 years you slowed because of COVID. Would that be the equivalent of being on year 3 or year 2 or 3?
So of the original plan, but I also want to say, yes, so of the original plan, it would be about year 2 or 3 when you take that out, because we started in 2020. But I want to say we've added additional projects to that. So we've expanded the initial scope. So I will use the example of distribution automation. Originally, we had planned to put 1,200 switches in to the system. Recently, we decided to add another 800 to give us a full build out of distribution automation, which will help with restoration. So that's a new project. The LED street lights was a new project that we added in there. So we have added a substantial number of improvements into that system. We'll share all of that out with you.
So I was talking to a couple of people today when it did come to foliage, like we were talking about, that contributed to a lot of the problems. They said that the goal was to clear about 1,400 miles a year.
That's correct.
But we haven't necessarily done about halfway to that every year. Is there any update on why that happened?
So we have a contractor that was helping us with that. As I reported to the board last week, we have issued a contract to 3 new contractors. Our previous contractor in the years 2020, 21, and 22 had cleared 600, 500, and 190 miles, and this year just a little north of 50. The reason we clear 1,500 miles of right-of-way a year, 1,400, is because we have 4,200 miles of distribution system and transmission system that we must clear. The standard for the industry is to be on a 3-year cutting cycle. It has been a number of years since we've been on that. That was the reason to move away from and to get some additional help here. And so we're going to execute those contracts, and we intend to be back on pace to a 3-year cutting cycle.
When it does come to that, are those out-of-state contractors or are they in?
No, there is a mix of contractors, and there is a contractor who was already working here and is from Memphis. We had the opportunity for people to have a presence here to be able to bid on that. So there's probably a mix, I would say. I can't tell you for certain where they're located, but I know at least one of the major companies is located here.
I know you said this is MLGW's sixth strongest store.
Yes.
Going back to your outage map, this comes from, some residents that are living in the Bartlett area, because I saw that most of that place is focused on that area. They say it seems like every time there's a drop of rain, strong storms or something like that, that place is targeted. Is there something in that Bartlett area why a lot of residents probably, because again, just that's what the data is saying, is there something in that area why so much outage?
No, and I would suggest that the good people of Bartlett are not alone when they say their neighborhood is the one that has the outage every time weather comes through. So we had pretty strong storms last weekend that did not affect the northern part of the county nearly as much as the southern part. And through this spring, we've had 6 major storms, and it was typically isolated to smaller areas of the county. This one's relatively widespread. To the point where people ask, hey, when the wind blows, my power goes out. There are areas of the city where that is the case. A strong storm comes in, there's a collision between either vegetation or our lines are touching, and the power goes out. Our infrastructure and reliability improvement program is aimed at replacing that old infrastructure and preventing those kinds of outages. So yes, my message is, first, we're going to focus on this restoration, but longer term help is on the way. When we implement this full reliability and resilience and performance improvement plan, our reliability will be at least 50% better than it is today. And we anticipate with the new improvements we're putting in, it will be even more than that.
Doug,
yes.
Sort of 2 questions here. What percentage of the outages today are due to very heavy winds we saw versus the age and dilapidation of the infrastructure? And then I'll follow.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Sam. I wish I had exactly the percentage. I would suggest that the majority of the damage we're seeing today is because of vegetation. That is what our teams are reporting from the field. Just it wouldn't have mattered how modern the infrastructure was, it was just taken down. Even areas that have underground infrastructure realize that that energy comes from, at some point, an overhead infrastructure and is fed that way. So the very vast majority today is because of wind and vegetation that had a direct impact on the infrastructure.
Will this renew the conversation you just mentioned, undergrounding, and what is feasible economically to underground a large bit of distribution?
Yeah, that's a really good question in the age-old discussion. I would say 2 things. First, underground is not the panacea. There are faults in underground, and we've had that in these recent storms. And when we do have a fault underground, it takes much longer to detect it and to correct it, and it's much more expensive to fix. We have, people may often not know this, but we have 40% of our infrastructure actually is underground, 60% is overhead. We did a comparative study with several cities who undergrounded their infrastructure, and on average, the base bill that everybody would have if we did broad-ranging undergrounding, it would be about double your standard bill to do that forever. So it's a significant increase in the cost. And so it's a conversation for our community to have. We think we're striking the right balance of selective undergrounding of utilities in certain areas, modernizing our infrastructure with modern construction standards and modern distribution standards. We are moving to a smart grid in Memphis, and our grid will be as resilient and reliable as top cities in America when we are complete with this. And it's not a future state. We are investing in it today, and by the time we get from just a few years down the road, we will have that fully implemented, and we will have a much more reliable system.
Where do you think you'll be, MLGW will be with restoration in terms of number of customers by the end of the day today, the end of the day tomorrow?
I wish I had. I'll put on my Karnak the Magnificent hat and say I don't have a card with the answer on that. We have made substantial progress. 30,000 people restored since last night is a pretty remarkable progress, and we were talking from our meeting this morning, we got another 10,000 on. I would tell you that it gets more difficult because the further you go, you're getting to smaller and smaller outages. Today, we're still dealing with very broad-ranging outages, so to the extent that we can get major circuits back on, we will do so, and when every circuit comes on, that's 1,000 or 2,000 customers. When we get down to the laterals and the individual transformers, that's when the going is a little slower, but we'll get a better estimate by the end of the day.
So when it does come to that repair process, you guys have some outside crews ready to help.
We do.
Are they going to be assisted by MLG? Like, is
Absolutely.
there who can kind of verify that? Because I know there has been some concern with Memphian that someone could claim to be an MLGW contractor or out-of-state contractor. What are the safety guidelines for that? Should they just let them in, or what?
Well, they typically will, those contractors will not be coming into your home. That would be an MLGW crew that's doing that. These contract crews that we bring in are assisted by MLGW crews. They're directed. They just become one of our team, and our team directs them to where the outages are. They are repairing the distribution system. They would typically not be people that are coming to the home to repair an individual service drop. That would be an MLGW crew doing that.
So just don't let them in if they're not.
Well, if they're
to MLGW President and CEO Doug McGowan. He was giving an update on power restoration efforts after Sunday's storm. I want to just give you a couple of key takeaways. He did say that this is the 6th worst storm in MLGW history as far as customers without power, right? Currently still 90,000 customers without power. He says crews are working diligently to get power restored for many in the area. He said 52 crews have been brought in from outside to help in this. He said there's troubleshooters, line crews. They're doing a lot of damage assessment at this time. He did say, though, however, unfortunately, to prepare for potentially it to be multiple days without power. He said if you know someone who currently does not have AC in their home, to help out a friend, help out family members if possible. Again, they are working to restore power. He said the goal is to focus on avoiding other emergencies, so contaminated water, things of that nature. Again, the priority, though, sanitary systems and hospitals. So again, 90,000 customers still without power following yesterday's storm. So we're going to continue to have more updates both on air and online. You can follow us on our website, actionnews5.com, all of our social media pages, and we're going to have more updates on Action News 5 at 4 o'clock. We'll see you then.